I think we can safely move on to eventing. So let's discuss both the pros and the pitfalls of this approach. So here I have a payments controller. And if you think about it, when a payment is processed, what is the primary or the core action? Well, of course, process the payment using some billing provider like Stripe. Then maybe you need to unlock the purchase, and maybe this takes the form of generating a license code or something like that. And really, that's it. That is the core logic that must take place as part of this request. However, on top of that, there are a series of side effects that will often need to occur. One side effect is notify the user. Send them an email, send them a text message that the payment has been processed. It's really not the core logic, but it's an important side effect. So notify the user about the payment. Now, another side effect, and again, if you're trying to figure out what your side effects are, just think of the things that must take place in response to this important action or this important event in your application. Another side effect might be similar to Laracast, maybe you have achievements, and every 6 purchases, you get a new achievement to your account. All right, it sounds like at some point we need to trigger the logic that will inspect the user, review their purchases, and determine whether or not they qualify for this new achievement badge. It's not the primary action, it's a side effect. Let's do one more. Maybe you want to stay engaged with the user. So maybe we schedule an email for 2 days from now. And maybe that includes a shareable coupon. Hey, we hope you're enjoying the product. If you are, here's 20% off to share with a friend. So send shareable coupon to user. Again, these are side effects. These are the core logic. Okay, so let's now discuss how you might structure this. It's very important. And as it turns out, there's many different ways to do it, each with their own pros and cons. So the most obvious option, and maybe the simplest, at least at first, would be do it all inline. Keep it like a procedure. Process a payment, generate a license code, send an email, check for achievements, and then send a coupon code. Put it all in this controller action and then be done with it. And you know what? Despite what some say, I think there's merit to that. It's definitely maybe the most easy to come back to a year from now. If you need to know what happens when a payment is processed, we'll just take a look at the 70 lines here. And this is sort of the appeal of traditional procedural code. You're not sifting between 20 different classes to figure out all the things that take place. But of course, what you might find after sticking with this method is that at some point it becomes very heavy and it's no longer easy to consume. Each time you add a new listener, you're appending to a 70-line controller action, and it no longer feels good. So at that point, you begin considering other options. One might be create a service class. Another option might be create what we'd call a use case class. This would be a class with a name that reflects what you're doing. What is the use case here? Well, we are purchasing a product. And within that class, you would have various methods that represent the many things that need to take place. This can be a useful approach, but it's not the one we'll discuss today. Today, we'll handle events and listeners. So an event represents an action that just took place in your system. So what is the event? Well, the product was purchased, something like that. So what if we fired an event, we notified our entire system, and then each of these could be their own classes that listen for that event and then respond however they need to. So if this is your event, these are your listeners. All right, let's give it a shot. Now, I can switch to the terminal, but a quick note, most editors these days will have some kind of terminal built in, like PHP Storm, or if you're using this editor, you'll find a run anything command. And this is really useful for quick artisan commands. Okay, so if we take a look at all of the commands and I scroll up, you'll see 2 make commands related to building an event class and a listener class. But if I scroll up a little more, you'll also see some general event artisan commands that you can review. Here's a notable one, event list. So if I say PHP artisan event list, this will show me all events in my application along with their respective listeners. When a user is registered, then send an email verification notification. So think of it as a if-then relationship. If this event occurs, then trigger this listener. Now, you'll find this is defined if we go into our app providers directory. Here's an event service provider. This is the bootstrap for everything events in your application. And again, you'll notice out of the box, we have an array here, which is effectively a map that defines all events as the key and all listeners as the value. Okay, let's get started. It sounds like the event here is product purchased. So I'm going to make one. PHP Artisan, make a new event called product purchased. Okay, so you'll see Laravel will create a new events directory, and there it is. But if you look at it, it gets a little overwhelming at first, but don't worry. Most of that is related to broadcast functionality. So this would be if you need a server-side event to be broadcast to the client side so that it can be picked up by your JavaScript. That's what this allows for, and it's really useful. But I think often you won't need that. So I almost wish this was added on as maybe an option to the Artisan command. Because if we were to remove it, let's say you're not going to broadcast an event. All you want is traditional server-side events. Then I could get rid of all of those broadcasting imports, including this one, interacts with WebSockets, and of course this one as well. And here is what we are left with. Much, much simpler. So again, an event class should represent an action that has taken place in your system along with any data that goes along with it. In real life, that might be a product model. In our case, we'll just say the name to keep it super simple. And we will initialize it. And a quick note, you want all of your event properties to be public. It's a plain, simple PHP object. And there you go. So now if I switch back to our controller, we're handling the core logic. Let's now dispatch this event. And we can do it in two ways. This would be one way. Dispatch an event with the name of the product. We'll just say some kind of toy. But again, in real life, that might be the product model they purchased. Okay, so this would be one way to do it. Another option would be to use this little event helper function, and then you instantiate it like this. These two are effectively identical. And in fact, I'll show it to you. If we go back here, this dispatchable trait, if you take a look, here's that method we just called. And you'll see all it's doing is delegating to that event helper function. So it's exactly the same thing. Choose whichever one feels best to you. All right, handle the core logic, and now raise a microphone and announce to your entire system, hey, a product was just purchased. If anyone needs to do anything, like award an achievement, or send a notification, or create a coupon, now is the time to do so. All right, so that's what these guys are for. They want to listen for this event. Let's create one. How about this one here? Award achievements. All right, PHP Artisan, make a listener award achievements. All right, so now you'll have a new listeners directory. Listeners and events are linked. So this needs to listen for some event. But what event? It wants to listen for when a product is purchased. So we can type it there, or a little tip, if I delete it and try again, if we run it, we can add the event flag, or -e for short, and we can specify the name of the event that we're responding to. So the only difference is now this type will be included for you. All right, so I will just represent this by saying var dump check for new achievements. And again, you're going to read off of the event object. So if you need to look at the product itself, maybe your event class will have a product property. If you need the user, maybe your event class would accept a user property, and you'll read it directly there. Okay, great. So we have one listener, we have one event. However, if we try it out, we give it a refresh, we run it, and nope, we expected some kind of dump on the screen, but it didn't happen. All right, so here's the reason. Yes, you have an event, and yes, you have a listener, but we haven't yet wired them together. So if we go back to Event Service Provider, we can do this in two ways, and I'll show you both. You've already learned this right here. So let's register a new one. When a product is purchased, then trigger these listeners, award achievements. So this is useful in how it makes things explicit. When this occurs, then do this list of things. All right, so now, if we give it another shot, we run it, and sure enough, we handled our core action, we dispatched an event, we listened for that event, and then we handled a particular side effect. Let's do another one. If If we come back to our controller, we got that one. What else? Send shareable coupon. All right, PHP Artisan, make an event. Let's grab that, and we'll just say send shareable coupon. All right. So once again, we have a new listener here. This will trigger some logic, maybe notifying the user. Send shareable coupon. And one last time, we'll go back to Event Service Provider and add a new side effect or listener. There you go. So now, if we try it one more time, now we have two isolated listeners or side effects that are responding to an event. Okay, so we're going to stick with that, and we'll come back. That's good enough. And yeah, yet again, you can see we have a core action that takes place. We then announce to our system by dispatching an event. Then we listen for that event, and we handle it however we need to. Okay, so that's useful, but this gets a little old, having to maintain this listeners array, and it's easy to forget. So while I like that it's explicit, it's another thing to maintain and remember to do. So as it turns out, Laravel can handle this for us. All we have to do is add or override a method called shouldDiscoverEvents. Now, if you take a look at this, by default, Laravel's not going to do it. But if we turn it on, what's going to happen now is Laravel will automatically scan your listeners directory, and it'll read these classes using PHP's Reflection API. And it then looks for any handle method along with an event. And basically, it's going to use that data. So it has the listener class, it has the associated event class, so it will automatically build up that listeners array for you. Okay, so now take a look. If we try it again, and we get the exact same thing. So just remember, you have to turn on that functionality if you want it. Okay, but now you might think, well, it was nice that I could see the relationship between events and listeners, and now it's a little more foggy, and this is absolutely one of the pitfalls. So again, think about it in your controller. So at least before, you had a really long controller action, but you knew what was taking place because it was all included there. Now it's been dispersed throughout the application, and it's no longer clear what exactly happens when a product is purchased. So I'm going to show you a couple options here. First, you could run the PHP Artisan event list command that we talked about. And now you can see, all right, if I ever forget or I need to know what happens when a product is purchased, I can refer here. Those two things take place. All right, so that makes it a bit more manageable. And of course, you could search your entire system for when we handle a product being purchased, and you could hunt it down that way. And here I can see, all right, two different places respond or handle a product being purchased. But yeah, either way, it's still something to be aware of. It very much is the downside to this approach. Yes, you've extracted and structured things a bit more, but that's not always better. While at one point you had a long controller action, now you have multiple event classes, multiple listener classes, you're wiring it up, you have to dispatch the events. It adds another layer of complexity with the trade-off that you get a bit more isolation and a bit more structure. You also might say it's a bit more open for extension. You'd need to extend this controller action and add more code, potentially introducing bugs or breaking things. Now, if you want to do anything else, we'll take a look. PHP Artisan, make listener, do other thing when a product is purchased. All right, have a look there. Hard dump, do other thing. And yeah, we have now extended the behavior and the side effects of a product being purchased simply by creating a new class. We didn't have to modify existing code. Instead, we created a brand new class to stack on that functionality. So it's a bit more solid in that regard, if that's important to you. Give it another run. And now we've added new behavior. All right, and that's all there is to it. So a lot to go on here. I do want you to be thoughtful about it. Don't go crazy with these events because, as we've discussed, there is a trade-off. But nonetheless, this is an important tool in your belt.